Imagine waking up one morning and the sky is the wrong color. Not overcast. Not stormy, wrong, a deep, bruised yellow. The sun is still there, but dimmed, like someone turned down the brightness of the entire world. The crops your tribe planted last season? Dead. The animals you hunted? Gone. The rivers are running with ash. And it's been weeks since you've eaten a proper meal. You don't know what happened. You have no science, no satellites, no internet. All you know is that something vast and terrible has broken the world. And here's the part that should terrify you. This actually happened. 74,000 years ago, the human species came within a razor's edge of complete extinction. Not metaphorically, not exaggerated for drama. Our entire species, every man, woman, and child alive at the time, was reduced to perhaps as few as 1,000 breeding individuals scattered across the planet. 1,000 people. That's smaller than most high schools. Welcome to Lost Epoch. Today, we're going back to the darkest moment in human history, the day we almost didn't make it. Setting the stage, a world in crisis. Before we talk about the catastrophe, let's understand the world it nearly destroyed. 74,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had already been walking this earth for roughly 200,000 years. We were not primitive grunting cave people. We were smart, adaptable, and creative. Archaeological evidence suggests we were already making tools, using pigments, forming social bonds, and possibly even developing early symbolic thinking. We had survived ice ages. We had migrated across harsh landscapes. We had figured out fire, shelter, and cooperation. By all measures, we were a species on the rise. But we were still fragile, still small in number. And we were living in Africa, largely concentrated in regions that were about to become ground zero for the most violent geological event in human memory. Here's what makes this story so haunting. The people alive at that time had no warning. There were no prophecies, no signs they could read, no way to prepare. One generation lived in a relatively stable world, and the next woke up to an apocalypse. And the source of that apocalypse wasn't war, wasn't disease, wasn't a meteor from space. It was a mountain. A mountain in what is today the island of Sumatra, Indonesia. A mountain so enormous, so catastrophically powerful that when it finally exploded, it didn't just reshape the landscape around it. It reshaped the entire planet. That mountain was Toba. Now we will discuss the Toba Super Volcano eruption. Let me give you some context about volcanic eruptions, because I think most of us dramatically underestimate how violent they can be. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington state is considered one of the most significant volcanic events in modern American history. It killed 57 people, flattened entire forests, and shot ash 15 miles into the sky. It was genuinely catastrophic. The Toba eruption was approximately 5,000 times more powerful. Let that number sit for a second. 5,000 times. Toba wasn't just a volcano. It was a supervolcano, a geological monster that had been building pressure for hundreds of thousands of years. And when it finally released that pressure around 74,000 years ago, the explosion was so violent that scientists believe it's the largest known volcanic eruption in the last 2 million years. Here's what happened in those first hours and days. The eruption sent between 2,500 and 3,000 cubic kilometers of material into the sky. If you stacked that material, it would fill the Grand Canyon dozens of times over. A pyroclastic flow, a superheated avalanche of gas and rock traveling at hundreds of miles per hour, obliterated everything within a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Nothing in its direct path survived. Not trees, not animals, not people. The ash cloud that rose from Toba reached into the stratosphere. We're talking about the upper layers of the atmosphere, far above the clouds where planes fly. And once ash reaches the stratosphere, it doesn't just fall back down in a few days. It spreads globally. Geological evidence shows that Toba ash, identifiable by its unique chemical signature, has been found across the Indian subcontinent, the Arabian Peninsula, East Africa, and even as far as Greenland. 6 inches of ash blanketed parts of India. 6 inches. Imagine every field, every water source, every living plant smothered under a blanket of grey powder. And here's where it goes from catastrophic to existential. The sulfur dioxide released by Toba, billions of tons of it, combined with atmospheric water vapor to form a dense aerosol layer that encircled the entire planet. This layer acted like a shield, reflecting sunlight back into space before it could warm the Earth. The result was what scientists call a volcanic winter, and it may have lasted somewhere between 6 and 10 years. 6 to 10 years without a normal summer. Without normal growing seasons. Without the warmth that all life on Earth depends on. The genetic bottleneck, proof in our DNA. Now, you might be wondering, how do we actually know any of this? How do we know the human population crashed so dramatically? We can't exactly go back and count the survivors. The answer is written inside every single one of us. In our DNA. Here's something remarkable about human genetics. Compared to most other large mammals on Earth, humans are extraordinarily genetically similar to each other. A study comparing the genetic diversity of chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, found that 2 random chimpanzees from the same forest in Africa are often more genetically different from each other than 2 humans from opposite ends of the planet. Think about what that means. A human from Norway and a human from Papua New Guinea share more genetic similarity than 2 chimps living in the same jungle. Why? Because we're all descended from an incredibly small group of survivors. This phenomenon is called a genetic bottleneck. When a population is drastically reduced, by disease, disaster, or extinction event, only the genes of the survivors are passed forward. The wider the original genetic diversity, the more of it is permanently lost in that bottleneck. And our genes tell the story clearly. Sometime in the deep past, the human population was squeezed through an almost impossibly narrow genetic pinch point. Some estimates suggest our ancestral population dropped to as few as 1,000 to 10,000 breeding individuals total. Other more conservative estimates put the number somewhat higher, but even those models indicate a catastrophic reduction from whatever population existed before. To put that in context, there are cities in the world today with more people than the entire human species had alive during this period. Yellowstone National Park has more bison than we had humans. And here's what makes the genetics even more haunting. The timing of this bottleneck in the genetic record aligns closely, not perfectly, but closely, with the Toba eruption. Scientists debate the exact relationship. Some argue Toba was directly responsible for the bottleneck. Others believe the population may have already been declining due to Ice Age conditions, and Toba delivered the final devastating blow. And a smaller group of researchers argues the correlation may be coincidental. But regardless of the exact cause, one thing is clear from our DNA: we came terrifyingly close to not existing at all. Now the question is, how did anyone survive? So here's the question that haunts me every time I think about this story. In a world covered in ash, plunged into artificial winter, stripped of food sources and warmth, how did anyone survive at all? Because obviously, someone did. You are proof of that. Every single human alive today is descended from the people who somehow found a way to keep going. But how? The honest answer is, we're not entirely sure. We weren't there. We can't interview the survivors. But archaeology, geology, and genetics give us some powerful clues, and together, they paint a picture of extraordinary human resilience. First, location mattered enormously. The people closest to Toba, in what is now Southeast Asia and the Indian subcontinent, faced the worst of the ash fall and likely didn't survive. The pyroclastic flows, the immediate suffocation of ash, the collapse of local ecosystems, it would have been unsurvivable within a certain radius. But Africa, specifically southern and coastal Africa, was far enough away that the ash fall was minimal. And here, something remarkable may have saved the survivors. The coast. Coastal environments are uniquely resilient to climate disruption. When inland environments collapse, when forests die and grasslands burn, the ocean doesn't disappear. Shellfish, fish, seaweed, birds, these resources persist even through harsh winters. Tidal zones continue to produce food year-round. Archaeological evidence from sites in southern Africa, particularly along what is now South Africa's coast, shows that humans around this period were exploiting marine resources with increasing sophistication. They were diving for shellfish, using ochre pigments possibly for social rituals, making advanced blade tools. This isn't coincidence. The coast may have been humanity's lifeline, a refuge where small, determined groups of people held on when everything inland was dying. Second, social cooperation. Small, tight-knit groups that shared food, knowledge, and skills would have dramatically outperformed isolated individuals. The humans who survived likely weren't lone survivors stumbling through ash. They were communities, broken, reduced, traumatized, but communities nonetheless. Third, and this is the one I find most remarkable, cognitive flexibility. Our ancestors' ability to adapt their behavior, find new food sources, modify their technology, and communicate novel solutions to novel problems may have been the ultimate survival advantage. No other species on Earth could problem solve at that scale. In the worst moment in human history, what saved us was the thing that makes us human, the capacity to think our way out of catastrophe. The volcanic winter, a world without sun. Let me try to help you actually feel what the volcanic winter was like. Not just understand it intellectually, but feel it. Imagine you've survived the initial eruption. You're far enough from Toba that the pyroclastic flows didn't reach you. The ash fall in your region was survivable, maybe an inch or two, not the lethal depths that buried other lands. But now the real nightmare begins. The sky doesn't clear. Weeks pass, and the haze never lifts. The sun rises every morning, you can see a pale, washed-out disk through the yellowed sky, but its warmth is gone. It's like living under a glass ceiling that blocks all the heat but lets in just enough light to remind you what you're missing. The temperature drops. Not dramatically at first, a few degrees. But consistently. And in a world without modern clothing, without insulation, without heated shelters, a few degrees of sustained cooling is catastrophic. The first things to die are the plants. Photosynthesis is extraordinarily sensitive to light reduction. Crops, if anyone was growing them, though they weren't farming yet, would fail entirely. Forests thin out. Grasslands wither. The base of the food chain begins to collapse. Then the animals follow. Herbivores starve first, as their food sources disappear. Then the predators that depended on the herbivores. Rivers and lakes become choked with ash runoff, killing fish. The ecological collapse ripples outward, each extinction feeding the next. And it goes on for years. Year after year of dimmed sun. Year after year of failed growth seasons. Year after year of watching your world slowly die. Climate models suggest that average global temperatures may have dropped by anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, possibly more in some regions, during the peak of the volcanic winter. Some areas may have experienced temperature drops of up to 15 degrees locally. In practical terms, regions that were warm savannas became cold, barren wastelands. Areas that received reliable rainfall became deserts. The ecological map of the entire planet was redrawn in the space of a decade. And through all of this, those small bands of human survivors, probably never numbering more than a few thousand at any given moment, kept finding ways to eat, to stay warm, to stay together. The volcanic winter eventually ended. As it had to. The aerosol layer gradually dispersed. The sun reclaimed its strength. The world began, slowly, to heal. But the people who lived through that decade, who raised children under a dimmed sky, who buried more dead than they could count, who watched everything they knew disappear, those people are our direct ancestors. Every human alive today carries their survival in their blood.